The next story is also from The Grandfather Tales by Richard Chase. Let me see if I, oh, it's called Wicked John and the Devil. Here's the illustration, but I think the devil was a little bit bigger. Old Wicked John was a blacksmith. Now, they called him Wicked John because they never could get him in church. No way. And he had a mean streak that no one could quite figure out. And the surprising thing is that he had a real soft spot for strangers. Now, one day he was in his workshop, and sure enough, an old man came down the road. He was all bent over, and he was in rags, and he was walking slow, and the day was so cold. And John looks out and sees that man, and he says, "Come on in, Grandpa. Warm yourself by the fire." And he comes out, and he helps the man into his fire. He turned up a log for the man to sit on and moved it, made sure it was close to the fire, and he went back to work. And after he thought the man had had a little time to warm up, he turned another log beside him up and said, "I'll be right back, Grandpa." And he went into the house, and he brought back this big plate of victuals. There were ham slices, potatoes, green beans. There was a slice of cake and a big glass of warm buttermilk. And they said, "Here, sir, there should be something here that'll help you feel a little warmer and better. Eat what you'd like." And he sat it down on that other upturned log. The man picked it up, and he slowly began to eating, and Wicked John went back to his work. And he noticed that something seemed a little different behind him. He looked just in time to see that old man start to rise tall in his chair. And he stood up, and he was so tall and muscular, and he glowed. And John gives him a look, and he says, "Well, who are you?" "I am St. Peter. And once every year, I come down from heaven, and I travel the earth looking for somebody who will do a kindness for me. This time, John, it was you. I give 3 wishes to those people who do that kindness for me. You have 3 wishes. Use them wisely." Well, John did not take this the least bit serious, and he started laughing, goes, use them well, huh? And he looks around. He noticed he had this rocking chair, and he says, "See that rocking chair there? Well, I am so sick and tired of people coming in and thinking that seat's for them. And I get tired, and I don't have a place to sit, and it makes me so mad. Now, my wish is that the next person who sits in that chair without being invited, the chair's going to grab them and hold them and rock them and knock them until they don't know what hit them." Now, St. Peter looked really concerned about this. He says, "That's not what I thought you would wish for, but so be it. Use this wish better, John." John looked around his shop, and he saw his big hammer. And he says, "See that hammer? Every time I turn around, some young thing is picking it up and using it to see whether they can crack a rock or walnut. They're hitting it on all kinds of stuff. So I want the next person who picks it up without my permission to get stuck to it. And I want it to wham around the room and take that person with them." Now, St. Peter was like, "Well, that's not exactly what I thought you might had in mind, but if that's what you want, then so be it. John, this is your last wish. Use it better than those first 2. And John looks around the shop and he sees his burning bush outside the shop. He says, see that burning bush? I am so sick and tired of people coming by and trying to break off the branches. I want that bush. The next time somebody comes up and breaks off a branch without my permission, I want that bush to pull them down into the middle and wrap those barbarous branches around them tight and hold them there until I say, let them loose. Well, John, if that's your wish, then so be it. And then all of a sudden, in a poof of bright light, St. Peter was gone. Well, John thought it might have been just something that he ate, and he went right back to work. Well, the next day, while he was working, a little shadow, he caught a little shadow out of the corner of his eye, and he turned around and he saw this little guy at the door. I mean, he had little horns, he had little goat feet, and the little guy, he says to the little guy, what you doing here? Oh, well, old Mr. Old Wicked John, my daddy told me to come and fetch you. Well, it was clear who his daddy was, and Wicked John was having no part of it. He says, I got to finish this horseshoe first. So he turns back and starts working on the horseshoe. And the little devil wanders on into the shop. It sees that rocking chair, and it sits down there, and it's rocking. And then all of a sudden, John takes that horseshoe, he puts it in the water, the steam rises with a whoosh, and he reaches for the next one, and the little devil says, oh, no. Oh, Mr. Wicked John, you can't do that. You got to come with me now. And he goes to get up, and that chair grabs him, and it starts rocking, and it's whacking his head against the back of that tall wooden-backed rocker. And he goes, oh, help me. And Wicked John says, why should I do that? I'll never come again. Please just let me go. You'll never come again. Is that a promise? Yes, please let me go. And with that, Wicked John says, let him go. And that little devil took off out of the shop running and screaming like it was a little piglet or something. John thought he was going to have some fun with these wishes. Well, it was another couple of days before he saw the next devil. He saw it again out of the corner of his eyes. At first, he thought it was a young man, and he turned around and starts to say, how can I help you? But he realizes that this is no regular teenager. Oh, yeah, he's muscular, and he's got a little more horns, and you could see the tail wagging there. And he says, what do you want? And the young man says, well, Mr. Wicked John, my daddy told me to come and get you. He did not like one bit how you treated my little brother. And I'm not going to take any nonsense either. Well, that day, John was trying to get a wheel off of a wagon so that he could fix the outside rim. One of the sections had come loose. And so he just went back to work on what he was working on and ignored that teenage devil. Well, the teenage devil thought, maybe if I help John, we'll get out of here faster. And so he says that. He reaches for the hammer and picks it up and says, here, John, let me do that. If I help you, we'll get out of here faster. And so he helped get that wheel off of the cart. And John then took the wheel back to the workbench to work on it. And the young man realized that he couldn't let go of the hammer. And all of a sudden, the hammer starts dragging him everywhere, up and down and left and right. And the poor guy's yelling, help, help. And John laughed. And he goes, what do you give me to help you? I won't come back again, I promise. And he said, you're right, you won't. Well, that hammer at that time was right above the devil up near the roof, and John said, let him loose. And that hammer dropped right down, nearly brained that poor young devil, and he took off lickety-split out of there, and John is just a cackling. He's having fun with these wishes. It was another 2 days later, and I'm surprised he really waited this long. But John was working in the shop. This time he was working on, I don't know what he was working on, but something. And it was more of a detailed piece because it was little, and he was trying to pay attention to it, and something was blocking his light. So he turns around to see what's blocking his light so that he can work on this little detail piece, and he sees this big, broad chest and 2 strong legs, and the head bends down to reach into his shop door and said, it's time, John. And John says, oh, well, why don't you come in and sit a spell? I don't like how you treated my boys. You might have pulled that on my boys, but you're not pulling it on me. Suit yourself, says John. Well, Hammer's over there. Why don't you help me? If you get out of the doorway, I might be able to get enough light to get this detail piece finished. I'm not picking up that hammer. I'm not going to have the same thing happen to me that happened to my boys. At that point, he reached out and he grabbed John. But when he grabbed John, John whipped him with his other hand. And the 2 of them were fist fighting and biting and kicking and scratching. And they rolled all over the workshop and out into the workyard. And finally, the devil was so fed up with John, he reached over and he went to grab one of those thorny branches. I'm gonna give you a licking you're never gonna forget. But the branch wouldn't break off. Instead, it wrapped around his arm and it pulled him down into the middle of that thorny bush. And the more he struggled, the more those branches wrapped around him. And he soon figured out if he wanted to get out of there, he was going to have to stop struggling. All right, John, you got me. Now, what do you want for me to be let loose? John was a laughing, a deep gutter laugh. And he said, I want you to promise never to darken my door or come anywhere near me again. Oh, that would suit me just fine. Done. And old John says, let him loose. And with that, the devil just disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Well, John continued being wicked for many, many years, occasionally showing kindness to strangers, but eventually he died. And when he died, there was no one there to greet him, neither the devil nor St. Peter. So he walked around, and then he finally found a staircase which was heading up, so he thought that was good. And he walked up there, and pretty soon he saw the pearly gates, and he knocked on the pearly gates, and a head popped out. Well, yes, it was St. Peter, and he said, what are you doing here? Well, seeing as I'm dead, I thought I'd come up and come to heaven. No, I don't think so. He grabs the great big book and he lets the door of the gates only open wide enough to point out, see this side, this is all the good things you did. Yeah, you were helpful to strangers now. Now, besides all the wicked things, do you notice that we had to start writing so small you need a magnifying glass to see it? You couldn't fit anything more on this page if we wanted to, John. I can't let you into heaven. No, sir. And with that, he pulls the gate back and leaves John standing there. And John yells in, what am I supposed to do? There was no answer. And sometimes no answer is the answer. So John just started down those steps as far as they would take him until he came to the other place. And as he approached the fiery gates down there, there was the little devil, and he saw it again. Oh, it's Wicked John! And he started screaming. And the teenage brother, came to see what was the matter. And he saw John, and he slammed the gates and locked it. And the devil himself came to see what was going on. And at which point, both of the teenage devil and the little devil hid behind their daddy's back. And the devil looks at him and says, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I'm not welcome up above, so I guessed I'd come here." "And what made you think we'd let you in?" "Where else is there to go?" John said. The devil thought for a minute. He went and got a pair of tongs and reached into his fiery furnace and pulled out a fiery coal. He said, "Stick your hands out." And John stuck out his hands, and the devil dropped this fiery coal into his hands. "What am I supposed to do with this?" The devil says, "Make your own little hell." And they all turned and walked away and left him standing there. So sometimes in the dark of night, you'll see a little light. Some say it's swamp grass, others say it's the fairy folk. But if you stop and think about it, you'll know who it really is. It's Wicked John, still looking for a place to finally rest.